a specter is haunting America. The specter of children's educator and entertainer, Miss Rachel. She's recently been accused of spreading Hamas propaganda for radical statements like, "I like kids having food," or other classic hate speech like, "Being silent during a genocide isn't cool. Speaking out is. I hope that helps." I wish I was exaggerating when I said that this has led to calls for her to be investigated by the Department of Justice for the crime of showing compassion to Palestinians, because that's the evidence being used to suggest that Miss Rachel might be a paid mouthpiece for Hamas. And this surprising turn has made Miss Rachel one of the most popular children's performers on the planet, the celebrity face of the anti-genocide movement. Because a lot of the other celebrities who usually speak up about stuff like this have been they've been pretty quiet for a couple of years now. And when historically political celebrities like Radiohead frontman Thom Yorke or Protestant singer Bono have made statements on the genocide in Gaza, they have been, to use the technical, legal, philosophical term, absolute ass. On the flip side of this, we have Irish novelist Sally Rooney, who's currently under threat of being arrested as a terrorist in the UK for pledging to donate her UK royalties to the group Palestine Action. But Miss Rachel isn't just operating with more moral clarity than the guy who once tried to sell us red cell phones that were going to end AIDS in Africa or something. Full confession, when I was 18, I bought one of those phones because I thought it made me a good person. She's also running laps around prominent Democratic leaders. And this all leaves me wondering, why are some able to respond to our current moment with a sense of simple humanity and moral clarity?
And it hurts my stomach to say this, and you're going to say, I disagree, that this is a genocide.
While others have to use thousands of words to say nothing. We saw something similar recently when Adam Friedland interviewed Democratic Congressman Richie Torres.
I lived there, and I went to a settlement at the end of my year there, and I looked down a hill at a Palestinian village, and I saw how they lived, and I turned back and I looked at the settlement and saw how they lived. And people live in a world where they're demeaned and dehumanized and surveilled constantly.
When Adam, in reference to his own experience as a Jewish person who has lived in Israel, talked about the horrors of Israel's ongoing genocide in Gaza, Torres, again a Democrat, dismissed him in a way that made him look sort of like a sociopath.
And you keep telling me that the problem is someone's getting yelled at a restaurant? I'm sorry.
You're conflating two different issues. I don't understand.
Please.
While Friedland, a comedian notable for a podcast called Cumtown, seems able to speak from a place of humanity and moral conviction, Torres throws around complexity and non-specific examples of anti-Semitism on college campuses to dismiss Friedland's moral convictions. So why are folks like Miss Rachel, someone who has really good videos on potty training, and Adam Friedland, a comedian who once pooped his pants on a podcast, able to navigate this moment with a sense of humanity and moral clarity, while various politicians and progressive thought leaders are not? I think it has to do with the failure to reckon with the terrifying nature of human freedom. And I think we can better understand it through looking at the work of French philosopher Simone De Beauvoir, aka the Beaver, and using her work to understand why Miss Rachel can say things like,
And we have to keep speaking out, and we have to hold on to hope, because we have everything right now and they have nothing. So it's our responsibility.
While liberal superstars like future failed presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg says crap like this.
You don't have to make excuses for the choices that Netanyahu is making, especially because they are often made not only in the name of the Israeli people, but in the name of a U.S. alliance.
Okay, before we get into the philosophy of Miss Rachel, I wanted to look at another example of a group of artists facing both media scrutiny and political consequences for their condemnation of the ongoing genocide in Gaza, Irish rap group Kneecap. And to do that, I want to start by thanking this video's sponsor, Ground News. Now, you guys have heard me talk about how one of the goals for this channel is to not be dependent on advertising. And that's because I don't want to have to compromise the ethics of this channel to survive financially. And when Wisecrack ended, and I was coming up with a new channel from scratch with no money to do so, Ground News was the first sponsor that offered to work with me, which is both a lifesaver and a sign of trust, as at that point I'd only put out a few videos and had a relatively small audience. And on top of that, I love that ground news is something that I actually use when researching my videos. Because in an era where articles are passed around social media devoid of context or proper framing, ground news shows me how a story is being covered across the spectrum. It gives me more context on the reporting and even shows me who is funding that news source. Now, for today's video, I wanted to use ground news to see how the reaction against Kneecap's political statements were being covered, as one of their members is actively on trial in England, which has led to them canceling an upcoming US tour. So let's see how the story is being covered across the spectrum. Now, at The Independent, a British newspaper that ground news lets me know has a high factuality rating and leans left, the headline says that Kneecap has canceled their upcoming US tour because of a witch hunt by the US government. And scrolling down, the article includes information like the band has said previously that its members do not support Hamas or Hezbollah and that it condemns all attacks on civilians always. Now, over on Israel National News, which is a right-leaning source that has mixed factuality and is corporately owned, there is a headline that says that Kneecap's recent performance at a French festival sparked fury and was anti-Israel. This article notes that the group made headlines in June at the Glastonbury Festival in the UK when member Mo Chara declared, "Israel are war criminals." I know this piece frames Kneecap as scary anti-Israel artist rather than being anti-colonial artist, something they've talked about and comes out of their experience being Irish. Now, it's incredibly similar to what we've previously seen in the media coverage about Miss Rachel, where one source talks about her support of children in Gaza and solidarity with suffering humans, while another will use the same story to talk about how she should be tried for federal crimes in America. Now, I'm going to spend the rest of this video explaining how we end up in this situation, but things like this are what make ground news really useful, because it helps me get a sense of how ideology is functioning across different media sources and even lets me dig deeper into understanding who owns and runs these sources. And zooming out a bit, a recent Duke study has shown that exposure to news blind spots can help moderate positions and reduce issue polarization. And my God, are we going to talk about that problem more in this video? So thanks again to Ground News for being an early supporter of this channel. And if you want to check it out for yourself and get 40% off the Vantage plan, which is what you've seen me using here, you can head to ground.news/Michael Burns or just scan my QR code right now. It's a great way to refine your own news consumption while also supporting this channel. And Ground News is designed for people who want to question narratives, not simply consume them, which is, sort of the whole thing that I'm trying to do here. So scan the QR code or click the link in the description for 40% off unlimited access with the Vantage plan. Okay, so let's get back to the existential terror of human freedom and how our ability or inability to accept that freedom can lead to some pretty unchill takes on issues like, the United States' complicity in a mass starvation campaign against children. Now, in her book, The Ethics of Ambiguity, Simone De Beauvoir argues that at the core of all ethical deliberation and decision is the fundamental ambiguity of the human condition, in particular an ambiguity towards the acceptance of our own freedom. And she writes that for existentialism, it is not impersonal, universal man who is the source of values, but the plurality of concrete, particular men projecting themselves toward their ends on the basis of situations whose particularity is as radical and as irreducible as subjectivity itself. Now, our engagement with the freedom we experience when navigating the specifics of our own lives is one of the ways that we justify our own existence, according to Beauvoir. She writes that existentialism alone gives, like religion, a real role to evil, and it is this perhaps which makes its judgment so gloomy. Men do not like to feel themselves in danger, yet it is because there are real dangers, real failures, and real earthly damnation that words like victory, wisdom, or joy have meaning. Nothing is decided in advance. And it is because man has something to lose and because he can lose that he can also win. Now, Beauvoir characterizes how we respond to this fundamental freedom with a series of moral attitudes, which describe both how we experience our own freedom and then what we do in the face of that freedom and with that freedom. And she grounds these attitudes in something that we all share, which is the experience of having been children at some point. Because if we were lucky enough to have a sort of normal childhood, we lived in what Beauvoir calls the serious world. And I know serious world doesn't sound fun. Like when you were a kid, you probably didn't think of the world as serious. The point here is that it's a world that seems consistent and well-ordered and without any existential terror or risk. For her, childhood experience is characterized by living in a universe of definite and substantial things. And the child's spirit of seriousness sees human inventions, words, customs, and values as given facts, as inevitable as the sky and the trees. This is a world in which children experience a happy irresponsibility, free of the anguish of freedom that characterizes the human condition. Now, if you have kids or have been around kids recently, you know that they often operate with a joy and a recklessness that makes it clear that they're not afraid to die or worried about climate change or mass shootings or the existence or inexistence of God. They just want to pet dogs, eat snacks, and occasionally poop in the bathtub, which is a thing that my daughter has done maybe 3 times so far this year. And it's clear from so much of Miss Rachel's advocacy that she simply wants children in Gaza to have access to some version of this sort of normal childhood. Now, Beauvoir argues that once we hit adolescence and young adulthood, we're forced to experience the collapse of the serious world. This collapse puts us face to face with moral ambiguity and the anxiety-inducing freedom of having to determine our own existence. So if children get to enjoy the ignorance of their own freedom, then the young adult is forced to reckon with that freedom and enter onto the moral plane of existence. For my fellow old millennials out there, I feel like this is similar to the themes of a lot of the early Blink-182 songs. And even as we are forced to exist in the serious world and accept our own freedom, we will remain nostalgic for its escape-like qualities for the rest of our lives. It's why now it's a thing that people spend a lot of money to go to adult summer camp. Pretty sure that's a thing I saw that exists, adult summer camp. Now, this engagement with freedom and moral choice causes us to cultivate the various attitudes that Beauvoir describes. These attitudes explain how we deal with the ambiguity of both our own freedom and the freedom of others. Now, the first attitude that she discusses honestly makes me think of someone like Charlie Kirk.
Hey guys, I just wanted to say that we finalized this video before Charlie Kirk was shot and killed, and just want to say that I hate that we live in a country where gun violence is so prominent, and I really hope that soon we can live in a nation, in a world where stuff like this doesn't happen. Back to the video, but wanted to let you guys know that.
You know, someone who is so afraid of their existential freedom and the freedom of others that they will take on forms of external determination to shield themselves from the positive use of freedom. And we see this sort of thing especially in Christian nationalists like Kirk, who are determined by both God and the state to exist in a certain way and then to force that existence onto others. Beauvoir calls this the attitude of the subman. Now, Beauvoir argues that the subman is especially prone to joining political movements driven by hate, as in the destruction of the freedom of others, they find a sort of unconscious fulfillment. You know, so when someone like Kirk constructs a worldview around taking freedom from women or trans kids or migrants, they're basically just getting off on constricting the freedom of others. But to truly be rid of this freedom, the subman must either literally rid himself of freedom or try to engage with it in a positive sense. And this is where we get to our buddy Mayor Pete, who I think embodies what Beauvoir calls the serious man, which she suggests is the most widespread of moral attitudes. Now, the serious man unconsciously recreates the serious world experienced as a child. While he does engage with moral freedom, he does it so that he can get rid of it. He wants to use freedom to control it and remove any lingering moral ambiguity. Just wants to be a little baby again. The serious man typically has a cause that motivates their seriousness.
Would you have voted to oppose sending those weapons?
I think we need to insist that if American taxpayer funding is going to weaponry that is going to Israel, that is not going to things that shock the conscience.
But for Beauvoir, this dynamic is precisely what makes the serious man a problematic and ultimately dishonest moral attitude. He engages with moral freedom in order to shield himself from further ambiguity. Because engaging with this freedom requires subjective choice, this seriousness is only a posture to help maintain his cause or place in the world, which he insists is how the world truly is.
I think that we, as Israel's strongest ally and friend, you put your arm around your friend when there's something like this going on and talk about what we're prepared to do together.
A la how the comfortable world of childhood, which lacks freedom, is actually experienced. Now, the serious man's entire attitude is thus premised on the dishonest denial that he is engaged in subjective choice. He then chastises others who are outside the confines of his beliefs for not being able to adjust to how things really are. So when Buttigieg refuses to condemn Israel's actions in Gaza and tries to offer complex political reasons for the Democratic Party's continued complicity in an ongoing genocide, he's appealing to some external system or theory. It's not that he simply doesn't want to engage with the ongoing moral atrocity. He's simply processing things through whatever geopolitical lens they teach you at McKinsey.
Do you think it's time to recognize a Palestinian state?
I think that's a profound question that arouses a lot of the biggest problems that have happened with Israel's survival, Israel's right to survival in the diplomatic scene. And many of the people who have taken that step historically have done so for different reasons than what we see happening with European countries. I think we need to step back and we need to do whatever it takes to ensure that there is a real two-state solution and that no one, not even the likes of Netanyahu, can veto.
Now, like the subman before him, the serious man is attempting to fight the destabilizing experience of existential freedom, whether consciously or unconsciously. One of these people tries to run away from freedom, the other tries to control freedom. And much like Mayor Pete's past and future attempts to be president, Beauvoir thinks that the serious man's project is doomed to failure because of a dishonesty about their own freedom. And just to be clear here, Buttigieg isn't some isolated incident or exception. I think he's an example of this whole sort of post-Obama political project in which possibility is always constrained by some larger market-oriented geopolitical project, one that always explains why it's actually normal and good that we can't have healthcare or why we must spend trillions of dollars on bombs while schools get shut down. Now, before we get back to Miss Rachel, I want to briefly touch on the attitude that follows from the serious man, aka the Mayor Pete, as I think it's one that a lot of well-intentioned critics of neoliberalism might adopt, which is the nihilist.
He believes in nothing.
He believes in nothing, Laboska, nothing.
Now, this is the person who thinks that they can see the truth of humanity more clearly than either the subman or the serious man. But according to Beauvoir, they react by rejecting freedom and all of its ambiguity in order to just insist on the absurdity of it all. She writes that the mistake of the nihilist attitude is that it defines man not as the positive existence of a lack, but as a lack at the heart of existence. Whereas the truth is that existence is not a lack as such. And if freedom is experienced in the form of rejection, it is not genuinely fulfilled. And Beauvoir sees the nihilist as being fundamentally passive, finding meaning in their rejection of the world, of the serious man, rather than actually accepting freedom and taking on responsibility for themselves or others. I mean, it makes me think of some of the left or post-left folks on the internet who seem so irony poisoned that rejecting everything that's bad becomes the foundation of their existence. I mean, until recently, this describes someone like Adam Friedland, a comedian who, while aligned with a critique of a lot of the bad stuff under capitalism, usually just rejected it with irony and absurdity. It's only recently that he's taken on a more earnest political position in his work. Also, if you don't watch it, shout out to the Adam Friedland Show. It's so good. It's one of the best things on this gosh darn website.
Was that the last movie you watched for like 4 years?
Yeah, that was the movie I was watching when this crime
though.
occurred. No, I love that movie.
Don't you think she's acting annoying a little bit?
No, I love that movie.
She acts like Amelia Bedelia a little bit, you think?
Sure.
It was the night that your life, I would hate it even more if your life got ruined the night I watched Amelie.
Amelie is the reason why I was safely in someone else's home instead of at home getting raped and murdered myself.
Also, Adam, come on the show. Now, this all gets us back to Miss Rachel, whose outspoken solidarity with the people of Gaza indicates both an acknowledgement of the fundamental freedom of others and the responsibility that comes from her own fundamental human freedom. And making herself vulnerable to the suffering of others, she's able to realize that her freedom is inherently tied up with the freedom of those being oppressed and starved thousands of miles away. Her attitude conveys a sense that if they're not free, then she's not free. And to be clear, this interconnected freedom isn't just some abstract existential idea, but it's a material and political condition in which often our seeming freedom can be at the cost of the lack of freedom for others. As Beauvoir writes, at the same time, the other charge, which is often directed at existentialism, also collapses, of being a formal doctrine incapable of proposing any content to the freedom which it once engaged. To will oneself free is also to will others free. This will is not an abstract formula. It points out to each person concrete action to be achieved. Again, this makes freedom not just an abstract existential condition, it makes freedom a responsibility. It makes freedom something that we do, something that we create, something that we achieve. Now, this sort of attitude, which Beauvoir considers to be authentic and genuinely free, involves affirming interdependence as the condition for truly realizing human freedom. This is the only true response to our condition as fundamentally free. And this means that rather than hiding behind the empty authority of political ideologies and systems, or the manufactured fear that, well, I can't speak up because it might hurt my career prospects, we need to take up our freedom in entanglement with the freedom of others.
Then, of course, I did see the distressing, horrific images online. And of course, certain ones just stick in your head and you just think about your own children. And so silence wasn't a choice for me.
I think this helps better articulate why Miss Rachel's outspoken support of Gazans is both scary and shockingly simple at the same time. Because at the end of the day, she's acknowledging the freedom and humanity of others while letting herself openly express the feeling of participating in a society that's complicit in the cause of the suffering of those others. Also at this point, quick shout out to Lindsay Ellis, who put out an amazing video recently on Miss Rachel and empathy and genocide and a lot of the stuff we're exploring here. And she did something really incredible with that video, which is use it to get people to donate to the Palestine Children's Relief Fund. If you've not seen the video, go watch it. If you haven't donated, consider doing that. It's an amazing thing to do and a really incredible use of having a platform that large. Shout out, Lindsay Ellis, we salute you. And all of this is also a reminder that things are often not as complicated as some would like them to seem, and that those making them so complicated are often just obfuscating a much more harsh and simple truth. You know, people like Miss Rachel or Sally Rooney or Adam Friedland and Lindsay Ellis have been able to see this simplicity and respond to the genocide in Gaza with moral clarity and humanity. And they all still have jobs and people still like all of them. So again, you can just do the good thing and you can still have a job and people will like you. I mean, I like all these people more because of that. Do you think I thought about Miss Rachel before? No disrespect, but I didn't think about her, you know? And now I'm thinking about her constantly. This also reminds me of the late Michael Brooks' response to the idea that the situation in Israel is too complex to understand in straightforward terms.
So it's not a complex issue. That's the big thing. It's super simple. There's one group that has enormous power. It's the most powerful country in the Middle East. It's backed by the United States. It acts on another population of people with total impunity and is never held accountable for anything. So there's no symmetry in the relationship.
Shout out Michael Brooks, always and forever. And what I hope is that we can all find the courage to stand on the right side of history and remember that our freedom is necessarily intertwined with others, whether we consciously realize it or not. And it's nice to know that Miss Rachel is going to be helpful both in teaching my daughter how to use the big girl potty.
I went to the party, I'm so proud.
And in teaching her empathy and moral clarity.
I see them like I see my son, and the fact that they could have everything they need and it's miles away. It's so frustrating, and I just wish we could wrap them all up in love and give them everything they need, and we could. That's what's so painful.
Thank you so much again to Ground News for helping me make this video. I'm at a time where a lot of sponsor offers that I get are for weird AI scams. It's really nice to work with a company that wants to support a channel like mine. And of course, this channel would absolutely not exist without my Patreon community. So thank you all so much for your support. Special shout out to all of my big dogs. Woof woof. I still have the goal of getting to 2,000 paid patrons by the end of 2025 to make this channel sustainable for myself and the team that works with me. So if you want to support the work that I'm doing here while getting early access to videos and access to my reading group, click the link in the description and check it out. And if you're only able to join for free, that's still awesome. It's a great way to keep up with all my releases. You don't have to worry about YouTube showing you stuff. I'll let you know when videos and streams come out. And as a thank you, you're also going to get full ad-free access to all of my weekly streams. So check out my Patreon if you want. And, subscribe if you don't already, like the video, leave a comment. I'm still at the stage where I'm just reading way too many comments. It's probably not good for my mental health, but I'm doing it. So if you leave a comment, I'm probably going to read it. Maybe I'm going to respond to it. So consider doing that. And for any kids who are watching, because of Miss Rachel in the thumbnail, here's a song. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, and your hands will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. Stomping my feet. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. Stomping my feet. If you're happy and you know it, then your face would surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, stomp your feet. If you're happy and you know it, shout hooray. Hooray! If you're happy and you know it, shout hooray. Free Palestine! If you're happy and you know it, and your heart can surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, shout hooray. Hooray! If you're happy and you know it, do all three. Hooray! It's the first one clapping. You know it, do all three. Clap, clap, stomp, stomp. Hooray! If you're happy and you know it, then your face will surely show it. If you're happy and you know it, clap all three. Hooray! If you stayed till this point in the video, two things I want to say. One, I hope you're okay. Second of all, I don't know, let's get a drink sometime. It seems like we would get along pretty well if you're still here at this point in the video.